We're back with some breaking news. MS Now has learned President Trump has informed Pam Bondi she will soon be removed as Attorney General. That's according to a White House official telling our colleague Jake Traylor. With me now to break it down, MS Now Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Delaney and MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin. Ken, we were talking about this in theory just last hour, but these things move fast. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, Ali, it is a fast-moving story, and our intrepid White House team, as you said, is digging into this and is now hearing from multiple sources that this departure is imminent, that Donald Trump has decided to replace Pam Bondi as Attorney General, and among the people he's considering to replace him is Lee Zeldin, the former congressman who's the EPA administrator. That would be an interesting choice because I don't believe Lee Zeldin has ever served as a prosecutor. We've also heard the name of Senator Eric Schmitt, who was the Attorney General of Missouri, bandied around. There's a lot of speculation swirling, a lot of people putting their names in for the job. I would imagine, as someone who's covered the Justice Department for a long time, that Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, who served loyally as Donald Trump's defense attorney, would put his name in and would want to be the Attorney General. Although the question is he too closely associated with the administration of Pam Bondi? Pam Bondi obviously came under fire, even from Republicans on the Hill, for her handling of the Jeffrey Epstein matter, for initially seeming to promise revelations when she handed out a bundle of files to influencers early in the Trump presidency, only to then later acknowledge that there was nothing in those files, and then to endorse a statement from the Justice Department saying essentially there's really not much to see here, there's no further prosecutions expected, and then to decide not to release the files, only to be forced by Congress to preside over this massive release of millions of pages of files, which by some accounts was handled badly, mistakes were made. But that's not the only reason Pam Bondi is on the hot seat here. Donald Trump reportedly is incredibly dissatisfied with what he sees as the slow pace of the Justice Department prosecuting his perceived political enemies. And that's even though the Justice Department has done things that no Justice Department has ever done in modern history, has essentially given up its independence and taken cues from the White House and brought investigations based on very thin evidence and specious claims and gotten rejected in some cases by grand juries and procedurally by judges. And yet Donald Trump somehow thinks that a new Attorney General will be able to bypass that and move faster as he seeks to use the Justice Department to pursue his political enemies, Ali.
And Ken, you have to wonder, too, for Todd Blanche, if you question if this is really all about the handling of the Epstein files, which you know that it's not because you laid out the other facets of this. For someone like Blanche, who had proximity to the way that Ghislaine Maxwell was handled, if that is something that makes it harder for him to ascend to this top spot. But I want to drill down on something, Ken, because our banner right now reads that Trump informed Bondi that she'll soon be out of this post. Why wait?
That's a great question. Only Donald Trump knows his own mind in terms of these personnel decisions. Perhaps they are still working through who the replacement might be, and they want to sort of sequence this and announce a replacement as they announce her departure. Is there a chance for a cabinet shuffle? Could she move to a different job in the cabinet? That's always possible, the way these things go, although it's hard to imagine Pam Bondi being satisfied with a different job than Attorney General. She was the Florida Attorney General. She's identified herself as a career prosecutor. And look, she could make a fortune in the private sector at this moment as the former Attorney General representing clients before the Trump administration, if that's the route she chose to go. So it's anybody's guess why Trump is doing it this way. But one thing we know for sure is that he has decided to replace the Attorney General, Ali.
And our team is trying to get a little bit more information about why there might be a wait. I'll read a little bit of that new reporting from our colleagues Jake Traylor and Laura Barone Lopez, because one official talking to them about this shuffling says that Trump still personally likes Bondi and notified her before officially removing her to, in their words, help her along. But at the same time, Lisa, many people in Trump's orbit have had knives out for Bondi. They've wanted to see her pushed out of this post. Even we saw Chief of Staff Susan Susie Wiles in that infamous Vanity Fair interview say that she saw the mishandling of Epstein from Bondi, specifically pointing out the moment where Bondi said, I have the Epstein list on my desk, and then she didn't. I think it just added to the confusion around the DOJ's handling of the files. But I think, again, if we turn back to Todd Blanche, who is also not just number 2 at DOJ, but Trump's former personal lawyer, what do you look at for the stakes around him? Because I think many would assume, all right, the number 2 ascends to the top spot.
Well, certainly on a temporary basis, the number 2 ascends to the top spot. We saw that last time, for example, when Bill Barr resigned at the very end of the first Trump presidency. Jeffrey Rosen, who was then the Deputy Attorney General, became the acting Attorney General and had to deal with the increasing pressures on the Department of Justice to intervene in the election, and ultimately was the Attorney General in place when January 6th happened, Allie. But let's go back to why not Todd Blanche? Because perhaps of some of that administration dissatisfaction with Pam Bondi and how she handled that initial promised rollout. You'll remember on January 30th, when 3 million pages of documents were released in the Epstein files, who stood at the podium and took questions and really described to the press assembled, I believe Ken was even in the room that day, what was about to happen? It was not Pam Bondi. It was Todd Blanche. And so Todd Blanche cannot disavow the handling of the Epstein files any more than Pam Bondi could. Many people might say that he has been the face of the administration with respect to compliance or attempted compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That's the act of Congress that demanded the release of those 3 million pages. Ali, I also want to share with you, I'm getting some reaction to the news of Pam Bondi's potential firing as soon as perhaps tomorrow from survivors and their lawyers. And many of them are somewhat buoyed to hear this news. But of course, for them, this is sort of a necessary but not sufficient move. They say Pam Bondi still has some explanation to do for how this has all gone down.